Could the Red Sox actually get something done with Alex Bregman here? What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Red Sea Radio. My name is Corbett, and thank you very much for clicking on this video. One of the biggest conversations surrounding the Boston Red Sox right now is what the heck they do with Alex Bregman long term. We all kind of know that Alex Bregman is under a very player-friendly contract right now. Technically, it's a 3-year, $120 million contract, but as we all know, it has an opt-out after the first 2 years, right? So this thing could end up being a 2-year contract, and more importantly to the context of this video, it could very likely end up being just a 1-year deal because Alex Bregman has every right to opt out right now, right? You take a look at what he's doing on the field, at least before his injury, which he's officially been injured for a month at this point, but before that, in 51 games, this dude was hitting .299 with a .385 on-base percentage and a .553 slug for a .160 OPS plus. Before the injury, he was on pace for 34 home runs and 111 RBIs. That's in line to get paid big time over a long period of time. So it's not really a question of whether or not Bregman's going to opt out after this season. It's a question of whether or not the Red Sox can prevent that from happening. And there's a little bit of conversation going on about whether or not that's possible. In fact, during the Red Sox recent trip to Los Angeles, which we're just not going to talk about in terms of how it actually went, one of the more important things to come out of that series off the field was the fact that Boston Globe reporter Tim was able to get in front of Scott Boras and ask him some questions about a potential Alex Bregman extension conversation. He had some pretty interesting responses. Obviously, they're in very infamous Scott Boras talk, but it's some interesting stuff here. First one is, quote, "I always tell the team, and Alex directs me to tell them, we're always open to any conversation. Any player who plays well somewhere, it's something that's important for the team and important for the player. It's an additive." Also adding in here in reference to both Bregman, his wife, and their 2 kids with their newborn son, saying they're at a time in their life where things are really great. Playing in Boston is something they really enjoy, and the community has been wonderful to them. And this is actually some pretty interesting stuff, right? And I think I've said interesting 10 times now, but it really is. Because inside of this sort of agent speak from Scott Boras, who does it better than anyone else, is the idea that there is a reality in which Bregman is very open to staying with the Red Sox over a longer period of time. And I think that surprises some fans, right? I think some fans look at this and say, why in the world would Alex Bregman stay with the Boston Red Sox? But I think it's important to remember that the way we see the Boston Red Sox is always going to be a bit different than the players who are actually in that clubhouse see this Red Sox team, right? We may be sitting here as fans and saying, Bregman, this is a mediocre baseball team with drama off the field. They're probably not going to make the postseason again, right? They just continue this stretch of chaos and mediocre baseball. You could opt out and you could go to the Tigers, or you could go to the Mets, and you could get paid there and not have to worry about either the off-field stuff or the inability to make the postseason. Whereas Bregman could be looking at this thing and he could be sitting there and he could be saying, yeah, the Red Sox right now are not in a good spot in terms of their record. But at the same time, too, we're 2.5 games out of a playoff spot. We have 80 games to go. I'm going to be making my comeback in about a month here, so that I don't have long to get back onto the field. The team is riddled with inexperience, incredible talent that once they get experience could not only be good this year, but be good for years to come. I could be a leader. I could be the main person, right, on this team to help them really push and become competitive not only this year and at the end of this year, but going forward, right? And not to mention, there's the whole family aspect. We don't really think about that as fans of this baseball team, right? We think of these players as just strictly baseball players, but these guys have families. They have wives and children, and Bregman has a wife and 2 children, right? And if they really love Boston, things could absolutely change, right? Maybe being competitive specifically this year isn't at the top of Bregman's priority list when it comes to whether or not he's going to sign here long term, because what you're talking about isn't 25, you're talking about 26 and beyond, and that's a completely different conversation with the Boston Red Sox. So you sit there and you say, okay, Bregman's open to a conversation. Let's get this thing done, right? Because it should get done 100%. But here, it absolutely takes 2 to tango. And speaking of tangoing with two people, here's what Craig Breslow had to say in response to Scott Boris's comments on WEEI. The specifics of the conversation, the timing of the conversations will remain internal. But what I am very comfortable saying is Alex has been everything we could have asked for, both on the field. Unfortunately, he's been hurt and hasn't been able to impact games on the field, but also in the clubhouse from a leadership standpoint. Not just in the way he's helped younger players and our staff, but in ways he's helped me and many of us in the front office. And so right now we're focused on doing everything we can to get him back on the field as quickly as possible. When the right time comes to have those conversations, very, very confident that we will. Obviously, the big takeaway here, I think, is that the Red Sox and Bregman clearly haven't really had in-depth conversations about an extension, and that should worry a lot of people, right? I think naturally it's going to worry a lot of people because you're already halfway through the season. Bregman's injured, which feels kind of like a perfect time where the only thing he's really focused on is getting himself healthy to go to him and say, hey, look, any chance, during your rehab process, you got some time to have a conversation about being here long term, right? We've seen that with baseball players over the course of the last few years where they sign these sort of extensions while they're close to ending up at the end of their rehab or they're sitting there in rehab, right? Especially a guy, Alex Bregman, who is going to end up being a really high impact player once he gets back. And I think that is an absolutely huge takeaway to take from this, right? The Red Sox have not started or engaged in those conversations yet. And that's a little bit terrifying with the trade deadline coming up. The second thing I want to point out in this thing is that Breslow is really, really open with how he's impacted this team. And I think that's also another important factor to remember here when you're talking about, why would the Red Sox actually pay this guy? Well, you look at it, right? He's impacting the team on the field. We know that. We already went over his statistics. The second thing is, again, you talk about this, and this is going to be a conversation with almost every single offseason or trade or free agent acquisition the Red Sox have over the next couple of years. How is this going to impact the core that you've developed for this team? Right? The Marcelos, the Anthonys, the Campbells, the Narvaez's, the Williers, the Sedans, potentially the Durands, right? The Harrisons, the Fitz, the Bayos, you could go on and on, right? There's so much young, inexperienced talent on this Red Sox team that you sit there and you say, how are these guys going to impact these players? And Bregman has very clearly impacted them positively, which should make him a huge priority for the Red Sox to bring back. And then you put in the fact that he's helping the front office somehow. That's absolutely incredible, right? Breslow not really one to quickly admit that he needs help when it comes to the front office stuff. He hasn't decided who a GM is going to be. It's been almost 2 years at this point. He's very publicly said, I think I know what's right for the Red Sox. I mean, we've had articles come out about him isolating himself in the front office, but for him to come out and admit Bregman's helped me in terms of front office stuff too is pretty incredible, right? You look at the impact that Bregman's had here, and it's pretty impressive in just 3 or 4 months being in the Red Sox organization, basically from February to today, with half of that not even being on the field. It's kind of besides the point, right? Because the ultimate point of this video is, can something actually get done here with Bregman, and how does that end up happening? To be totally honest with you, I don't know if something's going to actually get done. Right? I have no idea because there's just so many factors on both sides here that come into play when we're talking about an Alex Bregman extension, right? We know for a fact the Red Sox weren't entirely keen on giving Alex Bregman a long period of time money, right? We know that they wouldn't match the Tigers offer, and we know that the only reason Bregman ended up here was because they ended up going short-term a ton of money, and that was sort of where they wanted to sit with Alex Bregman. Now, obviously, that conversation changes a little bit. 1, with his play on the field, 2, with his impact off the field, and 3, with the fact that you don't have Rafael Devers anymore, right? You have a ton more money to play around with. You don't have that sort of veteran experience bat in this lineup going forward at this point. I mean, Trevor Story technically counts, but Trevor Story's dealing with his own stuff, right? Bregman could legitimately be that sort of middle of the order presence that you've been looking for. So maybe their view on all of that changes, right? Maybe they sat there on the offseason. They said, look, we got Rafi, we got Story. We don't need Bregman here for 6 years, with the potential that the last 2 or 3 years end up being sort of a downward trajectory slope. Now that you don't really have Story in terms of what you were expecting from him, and now that you don't have Rafael Devers at all, maybe it's a little bit different, right? Maybe we'll take those 2-3 years of sort of declining play in order to get you here for the next 2 or 3 years where you're an all-star MVP caliber player. I think that's a conversation the Red Sox are currently having, not to mention with trading Rafael Devers, that money's off the books, right? And you better allocate that, right? To sit there and say, we're going to save that money and build internally, I think would turn a lot of fans off who already are turned off with the Red Sox. Two, you got Scott Boras as an agent. Things are never easy with Scott Boras. Even if the Red Sox sit there and they say, look, we do want to extend you, there's a really legitimate chance that Boras says, great, Bregman wants to be extended, but you're going to have to pay the highest price imaginable because we know what we can get on the open market. And he's not wrong, right? We mentioned a couple of teams, the Tigers, the Mets. They're really just that bad away from being a legitimate World Series contender. They might end up paying out the nose to get a guy like Alex Bregman, and that's a big part of all of this. And then, of course, you got to factor in all the other stuff, right? All the other stuff like Bregman wanting to be here, the Red Sox wanting Bregman to be here. I don't know, right? I just simply don't know if something gets done. But in my honest opinion, I think something needs to get done. I think they have to get Bregman here for a long period of time. Trading him at the deadline would be so stupid considering the fact that you already traded Rafael Devers, right? You're probably not going to end up bringing him back if you do trade him at the deadline this year. You're probably not going to sit there and say, look, we're going to trade you and then bring him back. How'd that work out with John Lester? Now, obviously a totally different conversation, but sort of a similar thing here where you're like, look, we're going to trade you, and then we're going to bring you back after the season ends here when we get more competitive, once we get those prospects we got back for you. I just simply don't see that happening. Can't trade him. You know that you need this guy long-term. Bregman knows that you need him long-term, right? You're going to have to pay basically out your ears to get this guy back here on the Red Sox, but it just simply needs to happen. You look at what he could do on the field, and more importantly, again, you look at what he could do off the field. These young, inexperienced players, they need direction. Right? You need to be able to have a presence both in this lineup and in this clubhouse that you can lean on when these guys go through their ups and downs. What we're seeing with the Red Sox right now is not having that. With not having that, you have this inconsistency of some games these guys look like legit major leaguers. Sometimes these guys look like little leaguers, and that's to be expected with such a young team. To have a guy like this in the middle of your order be able to sit there and say, yes, this is the guy that even when Marcelo's going through a rough month or Roman Anthony is having a rough couple of weeks, we know that this guy's going to produce and it's going to take some pressure off of them. That's really important to this Red Sox team. And I think you sit there and you say, you trade, I mean, at the end of the day, you trade Rafael Devers for this guy, right? That's ultimately what happened. I mean, obviously, Devers, it became bigger, right? It became a bigger thing with Devers and the way he reacted and the way the front office reacted and initially reacted with Alex Bregman coming in. But this is why the rift started with Rafael Devers. To lose both of them in the same season, at that point, it feels like, you're sitting there and you're saying, Breslow, were you even trying to win baseball games, right? Are you even trying to make this team better if you trade Rafael Devers, or you trade Bregman at the deadline, or you lose him in free agency? At the bare minimum, this guy needs to be brought back once he opts out. You need to figure out some way to have him in a Red Sox uniform for longer than 1 year. And I'm not sitting here saying the Red Sox need to go to him and say, hey, how's 10 years sound? Right? How's 8 years sound? No, I'm saying, hey, can we rework this contract? Can you say, hey, we're going to take the opt-outs out of your deal. We're going to add 2 more years onto the end of it at, I don't know, $35 million or whatever, right? Then we'll make it a 4-year contract. We'll make it $120, $130 million. You'll still be making a crap ton of money. You've got that security now. Let's ride, right? Is that something that they can do? I think it's absolutely in their power to do it. I don't know that they actually do. So I'm kind of all over the place with this Bregman stuff. You look at whether or not it's possible. It's absolutely possible, right? You've got the players saying, I'm open to it. I'm instructing my agent, who, by the way, historically not great when it comes to extensions, but did get a deal done with Xander in the Red Sox, right? It's happened in the organization before. If a player wants it, Scott Boras does tend to end up doing it. It's not like this guy's sitting there saying, Bregman, I'm not allowing you to be extended by this Red Sox team. And then you see the Red Sox side of it. And you see Breslow going on talk shows and saying, hey, he's not only helped this team, he's helped me, right? But clearly both sides want to be here. It's just a question of whether or not it gets done. And we've got a long period of time to figure it out. My hope is that if we are going to figure something out here, it's before the deadline, right? Because once we get to the deadline, you're already seeing it pop up. Bregman is the #1 trade target on ESPN for the deadline, right? These are going to be the conversations that come up, and that could end up hurting not only a relationship, it could end up becoming a reality. We've seen Breslow trade away guys who I never thought would be traded, right? We just saw it happen with Rafael Devers. So I don't know. This whole thing, it's a giant cluster right now. It needs to get figured out. This needs to be ironed out. And honestly, Bregman needs to be here for a long period of time. But that's just my opinion. So let me know in the comment section down below. What do you think? What do you think about the quotes that came out? And do you think it's possible the Red Sox could extend Alex Bregman? Let me know all your thoughts in the comment section down below. As always, if you made it to the end of this video, do me a favor. Make sure you guys have hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you're new here, we talk Red Sox content almost every single day. Also, make sure you guys have hit the like button on this video. It helps these videos out a ton. It's the best way to let me know you're enjoying the content. Don't forget, if you guys want to listen instead of watch, all you got to do is head over to your favorite podcasting app and look up Red Seat Radio. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one, and I will see you in the Red Seats.